generates pain is bad. Therefore,
as I said, it's in conjunction. So not only would it be pain, it's from a state of non-existence and non-pain, as well as it being unconsensual. Because I've always acknowledged that not all things that are painful are bad, but in this instance, from a state of non-existence into existence, feeling pain without consent is bad.
Okay, so why is non-existence relevant here, bringing it from non-existence to existence?
You said why is non-existence? Yeah, because in non-existence, there's guaranteed no pain that you're feeling. You cannot feel any pain by nature of being non-existence, and I don't believe that feeling pain. Would you say that no pain is better than pain?
Yeah, but exactly. So you just answered.
Would you agree that no pain is better than pain?
But that's what I'm saying.
Right,
That's exactly what you
as a better instance in that having no pain is better than having pain.
But you just accepted what I said, which is implicit in your argument is the idea that an event that generates an outcome that leads to pain is bad. And you said it isn't because it's from non-existence to existence, and I pressed you on that.
No, I said
because
wait, what? No,
listen, that's what I'm saying. No, but this is what I'm saying. So you're saying it's because you're generating an instance of pain from non-existence to existence. And I asked you, why is non-existence relevant? And you said, because non-existence is a state where there is no pain. So fundamental to your argument is the idea that an event that leads to an outcome that generates pain is bad. And you're saying
non-consensually from a state of non-existence to existence, and you're feeling pain. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is kind of baked into that. But yeah, you're right. In conjunction, not from a state of non-existence to existence. And it's non-consensual. For example, if I ask you, why do you find grape to be wrong?
Yeah, so I accept all of that.
But why do you find grape to be wrong?
Grape is wrong because I don't know if you can say these words. For those sorts of relations to be moral, it involves consent. Again, I agree with you.
Yeah, and it's painful as well. There's no consent. It's painful. And in this instance, it's also from a state of non-existence because there's no harm that can be done to someone who's non-existent. So, yeah.
But I think you're missing what I'm trying to get to is that the only reason why non-existence is relevant, when you really think about your argument, and I know probably, I'm not going to assume what you actually believe or not, but if you really think about the argument you're making, what really makes non-existence relevant here is because it's a state where there is no pain. So still fundamental to your argument is the idea, the principle, that an outcome where there is pain is bad. Now, the thing that would be a qualifying factor for that is that you're saying, yes, cool, pain is bad, but if someone consents to the pain, then it's not bad. So that's really your argument. So you're still fundamentally saying an outcome that generates pain, unless it's consensual, is bad. That's it. That's just all I'm getting at the first point. Do you accept that?
You said an outcome that generates pain, unless it's unconsensual, is bad.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying that if it's not consensual and it's
do you accept that?
Then it's morally bad. Yes, for the same reason why you'd find grape to be wrong, unconsensual. Causing someone pain. And in this instance, I say from non-existence because that's still very much relevant because, again, as you said, it does link to pain. And again, they can't consent to being brought into existence from non-existence. And I don't find non-existence to be a bad state. So that's what you're not understanding.
No, but what you're not understanding, respectfully, I respect someone in your life, so I don't want to disrespect you. And I'm not trying to disrespect you.
Yeah,
is that the only reason why non-existence is relevant is because all you're saying is, I'm just rewording your argument. Non-existence is a semantic word for a state where there is no pain. So your argument could be translated as saying, taking someone from a state where there is no pain to a state where there is pain without their consent is bad. Which means your argument, the fundamental principle behind your argument is generating pain against someone is bad unless they consent to it. That's all I'm saying. Do you accept that?
I mean, not in every scenario, but in this specific scenario, yes, that would be the case. In this specific scenario, that's
okay.
The case.
So again, it depends.
But in this specific scenario, yes, from a state of non-existence, without their consent, guaranteed feeling pain, that is the conjunction. Yes, correct.
Okay, so give me an instance where you believe inflicting pain upon someone without their consent is morally permissible.
For example, if you have a baby that you're taking care of and perhaps it may cause them discomfort changing their nappy. Yes, they don't consent to their nappy being changed, but we know that would have to be good for them and that would be necessary for their health. And so in that instance, although babies can't consent, we would have to do that specific thing to them. So
perfect.
Yes.
You actually make my arguments for me. So remember when I first joined the live and I said, you're making like a hedonistic calculation. You're saying essentially minimize pain, maximize the avoidance
No, I'm
of pain.
saying that no pain from a state of non-existence is a better state of existence than having pain. That's
no, but one sec. You just gave me an example where you just said an instance where it's okay to inflict pain upon someone.
No, but it's not. They're not coming from a state of non-existence. You force them into this environment, and before there would be no pain that they'd ever feel, and they wouldn't be in a situation that could be the case. That's exactly why that issue would be wrong. Is the fact that
I told you why in this instance. Non-existence or not is not relevant because
no, it is relevant because in that instance
listen.
you're bringing them into this instance, just like for example in the case of Grape, you're being forced into this scenario again. That's
Okay,
why
can I ask you a question?
even if it ends up being some ultimate good and that they don't regret it, the fact is that they shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place, and then being from non-existence to existence, I believe that to be a bad thing in general, because again, you're forcing them into an environment that they don't consent to that thing happening to, and they can't consent to existing, and doing something, against their consent in conjunction with pain and of course from saying non-existence, I find to be morally wrong. So again, I've heard the baby argument before, I've made it on live before, and it doesn't work because again, they've already been forced into that scenario. So whatever,
I'm not making
irrelevant.
I'm not making that argument. What I'm going to say, okay, I'm just going to make a point and then I'm going to ask you a question.
You just said that's your argument, and I'm saying it doesn't work because the baby already exists. And you've already brought them into environment. And my issue is with bringing them from the non-existence into the existence.
Is it all right? Okay, I'm just going to quickly make a point, and I know you're going to disagree with it at this point, and then I'm going to ask you a question. But the whole point of me asking you the question is to get you to a point where you will actually agree with what my initial point is. All I'm saying is, in this case, two things: non-existence is not relevant here because the only thing that is relevant about the non-existence is that it's a state where someone isn't experiencing pain.
No, and it's also the fact that there's in that state, and that you bringing them into this world, it's still a non-consensual act that you're doing to them.
So that's what I'm saying. So as I said before, you're taking someone, non-existence is a state where you're taking someone where they're not experiencing pain.
No, you can even remove the pain aspect. It's still no consent, doing it without their consent in that scenario. We just fundamentally, I think fundamentally.
But this is the point. When I focus on the non-existence part, you mentioned the consent. When I focus on the consent part, you then flip back to the non-existence and you just make it circular. So when I say, for example, about the issue of consent, because when I say about the issue of consent and pain, you then say, well, yeah, that's cool, but it's also because it's non-existent. And then when I say, well, non-existence is only relevant because they're not experiencing pain, you say, well, it's also about the consent and the infliction of pain. So then you just keep going around.
No, you're not understanding in this specific scenario on its own, them going from non-existence to an existence without consent, I find to be morally wrong. Even that.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. Let's just pin the non-existence. What is relevant about the non-existence other than it's a state where they're not experiencing pain? Please answer that question.
Again, they're in that state, and you're forcing them into an environment.
I'm not talking about what.
I fundamentally find that to be wrong.
I'm not talking about the next phase.
You can't get any much more fundamental than that. It's fundamentally wrong. Them being non-existence.
No, I'm not talking about what happens after the non-existence. I'm talking about in the non-existence. What is relevant about non-existence itself, not what happens after that. What's relevant about non-existence to your argument itself, other than it's a state where there is no pain experienced.
Not only just pain, but they're in that state, and again, they can't consent to being moved out of that state.
Okay,
that's the answer. Very simple. It's a very simple answer. They've been in that state, and you're moving them out of their state without their consent. That's why.
Okay, so you think consent is the next one?
Sleeping and you are in their room, and then you move them to somewhere else without their consent. That's what I find to be morally wrong.
Okay, but this is my point. So again, you haven't actually addressed it, because all you're saying, you're saying they're in a state where they can't consent. So again, that doesn't change anything. We're just saying, all you're saying is you can't take someone from a state where they're not experiencing pain and cannot consent to the pain to inflicting pain upon them, which just means you cannot take someone from a state where they're not experiencing pain to a state where they are experiencing pain without their consent. That's the exact same argument. So that is the crux of the argument. I'm just getting you to see that.
You're not understanding the argument. You're not understanding your argument. You're misconstruing it, and I don't know how else to say it to you.
Okay, can we move on from that then? Because we're just obviously not gonna,
we have a fundamental disagreement. If you believe that that's not morally wrong, and let me ask you, in fact, why you find it to be a good thing to have children? In fact,
well, I was gonna say, using your same reason, which is the fundamental principle that basically the minimization of pain and the, I guess, promotion of pleasure is a good thing. That's basically fundamental to your argument, because you even gave it with the baby analogy. You said You can inflict pain as long as the pleasure is a greater outcome than the pain
No, no, no,
inflicted.
no, 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 no. I say any pain would be bad. In fact, any pain especially from zero, because someone not existing, they will feel no pain. But existing, they guaranteed will feel pain. And I think that is a morally bad thing to take them from no pain into guaranteed feeling pain,
But do you
regardless.
agree with me with the baby example? It's morally permissible to inflict pain on the baby when changing the nappies or whatever your example was, because the pleasure that the baby gets in the sense of their health and all that sort of stuff is greater than the pain you're inflicting upon the baby. You agree? That's why infliction of pain
Yes,
in that
but I
instance.
don't believe that they should exist in this.
Well,
In
no,
the
no, no, no,
first
no.
place.
I'm just
That's a
asking
separate
that.
situation. But that's a separate situation. We're not
but I'm
talking
saying,
about. I mean, we can bring up the baby example, but this is a separate
yeah,
situation.
no. So no. So you asked me why I
One second, my dear
believe.
boy. Just listen. This is a separate example, not from someone already existing. This is from someone already existing, not from someone who hasn't existed, who's been brought into existence. No pain, no suffering. Now they're feeling pain. In that instance, they might have some level of pain, and now they'll feel less pain and feel more pleasure. That's a separate situation. You're going from a utilitarianist standpoint, but this one is from the threshold of the ontologist that any pain would be bad in this instance.
Okay, so I'm not. I don't want to get lost. You just asked me why I think having children is good.
Why you find it to be good.
Yeah. So I'm just saying I
And then
buy
you
into
bring
this.
back to my
No,
argument. I'm
because what I'm
asking
saying
you why
is,
you find it to be good.
yeah,
Not my argument. Why do you find it to be
yeah.
good?
I was just gonna say that I buy into the same ethic that you buy into without accepting you buy into it. And also, just quickly, you just said.
What ethic? What are you talking about? What
Well,
ethic
you just said in the baby example you apply a utilitarian ethic, but then you said in the fetus example with obviously bringing a fetus into
Okay, so your
existence.
argument is that, okay, but what's your
Just let me
argument? Why
finish.
do you find it having children good? Like, you're not saying your argument. You keep
Okay,
reverting back to me.
I find
About you.
I find
Say the
I find
case. I'll get you
okay
on.
I find children I find having children good because I don't apply two different ethical
Okay,
systems in two
why do you
examples.
find having children good?
Yeah,
Why do you find
I'm
having
saying
children good?
because when you have children, unless you can establish that, and this is actually my reason. I'm not responding to you. I'm just saying this is my reason. Unless you can establish that in every instance of having children, the consequence of that child being brought into existence is that they're going to experience more pain than pleasure throughout the course of their lifetime. Unless you can establish that, I would say it's more reasonable to assume that having children is good because we know of the definitive goods that come from it in the instance of, for example, the pleasures someone experiences in life. So you can go through all the individual pleasures all the way to the collective pleasures of the fact that, for example, if you live in a society like ours, having youthful people means that they can continue contributing to the economy, which means that you can
Okay, let me
continue
ask you a question.
experiencing social goods.
Do you acknowledge that some people will feel more pain than pleasure?
That's why I
Okay.
would say in some
And also,
instances.
and one more thing.
So
Yeah, what were you going to
okay.
say?
Well, that's what I was going to say. In some instances, we can look back retrospectively and say it was a bad thing that someone was brought into.
And so, also, do you acknowledge that some people maybe people who've unalived themselves, we can look at the statistics, but some people will regret, there's a chance that they will regret being brought into this world.
Which is why, as I said,
Effectively, what you're saying is you're basically gambling with people's lives that, they might regret, they might not. And I don't find that to be, especially bringing them from non-existence, gambling with people's lives to the point where they may want to unalive themselves. And
there's a few things, but again, if that was truly your position, then you're taking a completely different kind of ethical position, because then you're saying you can't have it two ways. You're using, whether you admit it or not, you're using a utilitarian ethic for the first argument. Then you're saying, well, it's a gamble, but that gamble doesn't fit into your ethic. You can't say just because it's a gamble, it's inherently going to lead to a more painful outcome.
I never said it would inherit, but that's the whole point of a gamble. Of course, it's not 100%. A gamble is there's a chance, and I don't believe taking a chance with people's lives and that they will ever be morally permissible. You can do it.
So, for example,
be a morally bad act.
Okay, so for example, do you believe consensual sex? Oh, sorry, I don't know if you can say these words. Do you believe consensual intercourse is morally permissible? Just yes or no, just quickly, because I'm going to ask something.
Yes.
Do you accept when two individuals engage in consensual intercourse, it is possible and you are running a risk that at some point that intercourse will become unconsensual and you may then start committing sexual assault on someone? Just yes or no, just quickly.
You said at some point.
Yeah, no, so for example, two people can begin having consensual intercourse, and then at some point it's possible that intercourse will become unconsensual. Do you accept that? Just yes or no, very quickly.
Yes.
Using your logic now, you would have to say, because you're running a risk that it could become unconsensual, and unconsensual sex is morally impermissible, it should be morally impermissible for you to also have consensual sex. Because it's a gamble. It's literally the same logic you just used.
It's a separate situation. No, it's one second. It's a separate situation. You're not understanding. In my previous one, it was a conjunction of non-existent to existence, non-consent, as well as guaranteed feeling pain. Those were the three ones. In this situation, again, it's a separate situation. They're not non-comparable. Okay, I know the point you're trying to make, but the parallel doesn't quite work because they're not comparable situations.
No, they are, because you've literally just drawn.
There's different fundamental conjunctions to it. Okay, they're different situations. I can hold different standards. I'm a threshold deontologist. Okay, I have different standards to different situations. I have general rules, but I have different standards to different situations.
If they are different, if they're not equivalent, why every time someone comes up here and you give your argument about, inflicting pain upon this fetus that didn't consent to it without its consent, why is your first example to always bring up sexual relations if they're not comparable? I just did the same thing as you. And then when I do it, it's not comparable. But when you do it to people saying, oh, why do you believe grape is wrong? It's the same thing. You literally just use the same two categories I did. And that's exactly why I use that example.
But they're not the exact same, but those are different examples as to why they think that some way. Again, there's no objective facts in morality. You not understand. There's no objective facts. Morality is by nature subjective. So if we fundamentally disagree, we fundamentally disagree. And we can disagree in different situations, because in different situations, my cell moral framework will apply in different ways. That's why they're not comparable, this thing in this instance, as well as the other thing, because they aren't comparable in that sense. I just bring that up as a moral supposition as to why I find it to be bad. I know there's no way I can prove to you any objective claim. Objectively, I can't prove any of these claims to you. They're simple moral suppositions and subjective moral suppositions. That's the point I'm making.
May I ask how old you are? Just quickly, if that's all right. Just very quickly.
How old are you?
I'm 24, I told you.
Okay, well, my age is above 18.
You know what it is? Because you sound like someone who has just studied first year philosophy. Because for example, you talked about